Would you like a quilt that you can do in a day if you had 6-8 hours just to dedicate to making the quilt? Or even just for a weekend? I have designed a quilt that is simple, fast, and easy that you can have done in a weekend. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie with Jackie Russell Creates, where I give you tips, tricks, and techniques for your next sewing project, whether they're big or they're small. So if you want to learn how to make this simple quilt, hit the subscribe button and that notification bell, and let's get started. So it's a very easy one. You don't need per se a whole lot of fabric for it as per yardage wise, but you're going to need some. The first thing you're going to need is a layered cake. Now I got this layered cake from Fat Quarter Shop. I'm not for sure of what it's called and who it's by. I will link it in the description, but it's just a fun floral print. There's, the big floral, and then there's some little ones. Then you're going to need about a yard of some darker fabric. I'm calling it the shadow, to kind of offset your layer cake. Now I picked fabric that matched, that kind of blended with all the colors, but it's still darker. And then you're going to need you only need about a yard of this fabric. And then you're going to need several yards of a neutral color that's going to be your background fabric. I went with this off-white creamy color, and so you're going to need a couple yards of that. So let's get started on how simple it is to put this block together. And I'm going to use the chain piece method because it will make it simpler, faster, and is a lot easier to do. You have your layer cake. They come as 10-inch squares. And then you're going to cut your shadow pieces. And I cut them at 2.5 inches. So if you can find a jelly roll that's in the colors you want, that'd be perfect as well. And so I just took it and did it the length or the width of the fabric. I cut 2.5-inch strips, and then I subcut them into 8 inches and 10 inches. But I did the stack and whack. So I cut out 4 strips, laid them on top of each other, and then cut out, did some more. I like to stay with just 4 layers of fabric to cut. That's why I did 4 strips. Same thing with the cream. I just cut with the fabric at 2.5 inches, and then I subcut them at 2.5-inch square. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take and sew one of these squares onto each strip. So that's pretty much all you need for one block. So I have my strips all ready to go. And what you're going to do is you need to make sure you have 20 of your 10-inch strips or blocks, squares. So a layered cake comes with, I want to say, like 42, something like that. You need 20 of them for this size quilt. Now you can make it smaller, you can make it bigger. You can also make your own 10-inch squares if you have fabric that you like. And so as you can see, I'm just running them through the machine. I'm not cutting the thread. I'm just continually stitching. I'm going to go through my whole stack, and then we're going to go to the sewing or the ironing board, and we're going to press toward the dark color. By working in batches like this, doing your chain stitching, and then ironing them all at once, it really does save some time. You can see how fast this is going, and I will have the last 8 blocks done here before we know it. Now I'm going to leave this last one in my sewing machine as my ender. But we'll get back to it. So now that we have them all pressed and they're open, you need to take your 10-inch square and find out which direction you want it to go if it has a certain direction. So I want mine to go this way. This is the bottom down here. We're going to take our short piece and we're going to lay it and make sure that the 2.5-inch square is on my left side. And I like to put pins in it. I just put one in each corner and one in the center just to help hold it while I'm sewing. And then we're going to do the chain, but I have one that I already stitched, so you'll press it whichever way the fabric wants to go. And so to give less bulk, it's going to want to go to, mine wants to go to the 10-inch square. So then you're going to take your longer piece and you're going to match up your shadow effect at the bottom, and you're going to stitch down that way. So then you're going to end up with a block that looks like this. You're going to have your 10-inch block up here, and then you're going to have your shadow effect down there. And that is how simple it is just to put the block together. So let me get these blocks finished and we'll assemble this. Okay, so next, after you have them all sewn and pressed, you're going to want to cut your sashing. Your sashing is 2.5 inches wide, and I cut it the width of the fabric, and then I subcut it to 12 inches because our blocks are 12-inch squares. And then you're going to lay out your design on how you want your blocks to be laid. I'm doing a 4 across by 5 down. Then you're going to want to pin your sashing to 3 of the first 3 of your row. And we're just going to chain stitch the 3, and then we're going to combine them so we have the row, and we're going to press them toward the sashing. Both sides are going to come in toward the sashing. That's where the less bulk is going to be. So to cut the sashing to put our rows together, it is 53 inches long. And so what I like to do is cut several strips, and then I will piece them together end to end. And then that way, when I go to cut them, the seam here is not going to be in the same spot in each row, and it offsets it. So what you're going to do is you're going to pin the sashing to the top of rows 5, 4, 3, and 2. You're going to leave the first row with no sashing. When I pin my sashing, I like to start at one end, and I'll pin it here, and then I go to the other end, making sure not to twist the sashing, and pin at this end. And then I find the middle and put a pin in there. So what I do is take the 2 pins, line them up. I put my finger in the sashing and the row, and there is my center. I just line up the raw edges and pin, and then I take that pin and put it with the end pin, and I do the same thing, lining up the center of that section, and I put a pin there, and then I just put an additional pin in the middle of the other section, making sure that it lines up, and I do that all the way across. And then we're just going to sew across, or sew these on, and then we're going to press them toward the sashing. And then once you have the sashing on one, then you're just going to start pinning the rows together, and I'll be back to show you the finished quilt top. So here we are with our quilt done. I am adding a border to mine. You can add whatever size border you want. I'm going to be doing a 2.5 inch border, so I cut it at 3 inches. And so I know the top and the bottom border has to be 53 inches because that's how wide the top is at this moment. So I have them pinned on and ready to go. So once I'm done sewing, I'm going to press it toward the border, and then we're going to measure and see how long we need to go down the side. So there's the finished quilt top. My length is 72. So my total quilt top measures 58 by 72 inches, a good lap quilt, you know, to cuddle up on the couch with. I am calling it Garden Shadow. So if you'd like the pattern, comment in the description below and I will create one. And now it's ready to go quilt and bind as desired. Until then, happy quilting, my friends.